My name is Jackie Trailis, and I'm a member of the programs team here at SFL. Thank you. Before we start, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this evening's possible. I would also like to remind you that if you don't already have a library card, it is easy to get one by visiting any information desk in this building. Finally, I would like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at upcoming 7 Stories Up programs like this one. We have an excellent lineup continuing into next year, featuring new fiction, nonfiction, music, local history, and more. We would love to have you join us up here again. And now let me introduce tonight's author. Katie Fricas is a cartoonist and editor in New York City. Her comics have been in the New York Times Book Review, Los Angeles Review of Books, The Guardian, and The New Yorker, as well as various anthologies. Checked Out is her first book. Without further ado, please welcome Katie and Rachel.
Thanks, Jackie. Hi, Katie. Welcome. So the first question I wanted to ask was, how did you get into comics? And if you can remember, what was the first comic that made you think, I want to do that?
Well, I was a late bloomer to comics. I liked cartoons on TV. So when I was a kid, I was really into like Hanna-Barbera cartoons and the Jetsons and the Flintstones and things like that. But superhero comics and things like that never really resonated with me. I always kind of wanted to be a writer, and then I like to draw too. But when I was in my early 20s, I took a trip to San Francisco with my first girlfriend, and we went to all these indie bookstores, and there were all these like used comics for sale, and they were all by like women and dyke cartoonists from the 70s and 80s and 90s. So I kind of got into comics, as an adult through people like Diane DeMassa, who did Hothead Paisan, Homicidal Lesbian Terrorists. She had kind of a rage drawing style that really resonated with me. Lee Mars, who did this comic called Pudge Girl Blimp, which is this like sexually frustrated woman who's just like raging around town. And so when I realized that you could tell your own stories or kind of like non-fantastical stories in comics, then I realized I wanted to start combining my drawing with my writing.
Nice. Yeah. I loved Hothead Paisan. I like not found it, but like, you know, she published the collected version of it this year, and
yes,
that was the first time I encountered her comics, and I was like, oh my God, this is so fun.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, they published it on the New York Review of Comics, which is a division of New York Review of Books, which is this kind of, distinguished publisher. So it's pretty awesome. But I mean, I was pulling like single issues of Hothead Paisan from these shops, and I did lend a few out, and I never saw them again. So that was a mistake.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
That's always the worst, when you lend something and then it doesn't come back to you.
I feel like you should know when you're lending a friend a book, like to kiss it goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've come to that.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you come to, so you wanted to be a writer first, but you drew, you did some art, and then you came across these comics. How did you come to watercolor as a medium for your comics?
I'm really impatient, and watercolor dries fast. So it was definitely something that, and it also, in my opinion, it looks good. Like, even if you're bad at it, there's something sort of distinguished about the way that it dries. I was originally just doing like black and white comics with like a micron pen and a felt tip and a pencil. And then I shifted after I took a class at the 92nd Street Y to ink, but instead of using a nib, which is kind of like the traditional cartoonist medium, which I was like getting all over me and making a mess with, I was using a paintbrush. And just the fluidity of that and the speed that you could do things with was really attractive to me. So yeah, I started dipping into watercolor. The book is actually watercolor and marker. So
okay.
So I would do pencil on paper, and then I would do watercolor, wait for that to dry, and then bump the colors up with marker, which always made me feel just like a little kid, like with my coloring book. And then the black lines are all just Flair felt tip pens that you would get at like Dwayne Reed. Yeah.
Nice. Was it like nice markers or like Crayola?
Well, I was using Crayola.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
well, they're just so cheap, and there's so many colors in a pack. But my friend, who's a fellow cartoonist, Jennifer Camper, would come over to my house and be like, "This is not archival. This is not archival. Like, don't stop doing this." So yeah, now I use fancy Copic markers, which I hear you can are refillable markers, but I've never met anyone who's ever refilled their Copics. So yeah, but they're like $5 per marker. And so they do. I actually only used one set of markers and I mean like 100 markers and one set of watercolors, and it lasted for the whole book somehow.
Wow, that's that's pretty impressive.
I kind of can't believe it. I'm like, I don't understand, how is this still going? But it did. Yeah.
Nice. They lasted through the end. That's awesome. So while you were creating Checked Out, what kind of media were you consuming at the time? Like, do you think they informed your process or like the story at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in New York City for 20 years. I love living in New York City because like all bands pass through New York City when they're on tour. You can go see a play. And so I was consuming like everything I could. I mean, I would listen to podcasts here and there, but I often couldn't listen to something with words when I was working on the writing because it would confuse me. But I really love this podcast called Scam Goddess, which is hosted by Lacey Mosley. And it's about kind of like current scams that are taking place through time. And it's a comedy podcast. That one's really great. There's a podcast called Glamorous Trash that's hosted by Chelsea Devantez, where they read celebrity memoirs and talk about it. So I did a lot of that. I watched a lot of long series of TV shows like 90 Day Fiance. I've seen every single spinoff. I know all of the cast members. And part of that is like you don't exactly have to or want to pay super close attention, and you can't miss anything because they're always just recapping over and over again.
That's the best part. Yeah. You don't have to pay attention at all.
No, but you can still tell what's going on. Yeah. And I also just love like watching like depravity, like in action, like seeing people like being really delusional. Like I sometimes feel like if I could only read someone's face, I can see what they're thinking, and like that's just totally not true. So I'm really intrigued by that. There's this show called Love After Lockup where it's like one person is incarcerated and another person's not, and they have this love affair, and that show can get really dicey, which I'm totally into that. And also there's like 60 episodes per season, so it just kept going and going, and it was always fun to like see people get out of prison. That was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's always good.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I live near Greenwood Cemetery, so I feel like I loved going to Greenwood Cemetery. I saw Diana Ross at Radio City Music Hall and like Janelle Monáe. And so I was just like consuming as much as I could in all media.
Awesome.
Yeah. I also read like over 100 books during the course of making the book, just because I think my opinion is like whenever you're writing a book, you should be reading books. So I definitely adhered to that. And I have like a yearly number I try to hit for how many books I read.
What's the number?
Well, it's gotten lower. It used to be 50, but now it's more like 35. And I'm only at 17 right now. So I have to read like 18 books this weekend. Yeah.
I think you can do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so too.
I think 50 is that's a pretty generous number. That's like,
it's too much. I mean, but if you're reading comics, I mean, you can read them really fast.
Yeah.
So, or you can cheat. Like I'm reading a bunch of short books right now and I'm like, bam, bam, bam.
You're like, that counts.
Yeah.
Number 18. Yeah. Great. So, is there a part of the process that you usually begin with first? Like, do you do the story, or do you do you start drawing first and then the story comes later? Like, or do you do them like basically at the same time? What kind of comes first for you usually?
Well, I start by cleaning my house top to bottom.
Okay.
It's sort of like a procrastination technique that's actually quite rewarding. And, my therapist told me that was part of my process, which I thought I was like, oh, cool, this is great. So
I'm working.
I definitely have like a very like binge and purge way of working. Like I will not touch anything for like 3 weeks or a month, and then I'll do like 60 pages in 2 days and make a huge mess. And then a month goes by, I clean the house again, and then I sit down. As far as actually making the comic, I think I do. It's sort of like baking where you add like the wet to the dry. I was like, I do kind of both at the same time. Sometimes if you just do writing, you write way too much, and by the time you're going to put it in with the pictures, you have to cut like 90% of it, which can also be pretty freeing, but it can be frustrating too if you've gotten really attached to what you've written. So I generally will kind of try to sketch out a layout, and then I'll kind of write into the layout and see what fits, and then do pictures to go with that. And then I do the painting and the inking from there.
Nice. That sounds like a good process, especially starting with like a literal clean slate, like your house.
Yeah, well, I have to have everything perfect. You know, I have like my little tchotchkes around me, and like if there's something I'm looking at it's the wrong color, I have to change it, or it like bums me out. You know, I have to have the desk facing a certain way, but then if it's been facing that way for too long, I have to flip it another way. So it's all very like moody, you know. It doesn't really make sense. And I didn't do this book in order. I didn't write it in order. I fed it page by page to the publisher with like a leaf blower, and so they really helped me figure out how to flow it together properly, because it actually was kind of chaotic.
That's awesome. I like that. That's cool. I mean, it makes me feel better, because then I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily have to have a process. I can just do it.
Yeah,
you know?
well, whatever you're doing is your process, you know.
Yeah.
But I do envy, like, I do know some cartoonists who like they open their sketchbook, they draw a square in the top left, they do the first line, the second, the third, and they turn the page, and I'm just like completely in awe of anyone who can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to be that organized, I feel.
Virgos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your zine, which shares the same name, Checked Out, is a lot more autobiographical than the book. Can you tell us a bit about why you chose to fictionalize the book rather than make it like a library worker's autobiography? You do include elements that, true stories that have happened to you, or like, things related to your life. But how much of the book maybe like reflects your actual lived experience?
A lot of it does, but I also feel like we have enough like white women coming of age queer stories, and so I wanted it, even though that is my identity, I wanted it to be about more. So the character in the book is writing a book herself, and it's about this pigeon who saved a battalion of 200 men in World War I. The character herself is a military brat, and so she's kind of grappling with like facing, what does that mean? Like, what do you inherit as the child of a soldier? Like, what does it mean to have, is there PTSD in your DNA? That kind of thing. So I consider it an anti-war book. It's full of jokes, but it's also kind of serious, and I wanted it to have something to say against propaganda. I think we're super saturated in propaganda currently, to the point that it's hard to even parse what is real and what isn't. And so, I mean, no spoilers, but part of it is like, I needed the character to understand that the story she was telling was more of a continuation of one that already existed, and that maybe there was something deeper there. So, but also, I pitched the book as like an episodic semi-memoir to the publisher, and it really was full of like stuff that happened in my own life. But then I started getting like really embarrassed and nervous about that, and it was just making me feel like people, I currently work at a library, and people are like coming in and saying, "Oh, I read your book," and I'm like, "Oh, great, like my boobs are in it," and it's just like it's just rough, Yeah. So it's definitely fiction officially now, but No, there's a story about the character's mom in the book that mirrors my mom's actual story. And that was dicey. I mean, I actually let her see those pages before it went to publication to see if she wanted me to change anything about what the character says. And she did. And that's probably the only person that I would like edit the words for. There's a character that the main character Louise is in love with. Her name is Wanda. She's this evil redhead, and that person is based on someone that I actually know and I'm still friends with. And she didn't know she was in the book, and I took her out to dinner like right before it was going to come out, and I was like, okay, well, I have something to tell you. So I basically just told her. I mean, the stuff that happens in the book had happened to the two of us like over a decade ago. I just told her, like, you're in the book and you look really bad, but I changed your appearance. And she said, I didn't know whether or not I should be flattered or pissed. And I was like, well, just be flattered. So yeah, so I did feel an obligation like to tell some of the people who appeared in the book that they were going to be in the book. But for the most part, I completely changed everyone's appearance.
Do you think they would have, like, if you hadn't told them, do you think they would have recognized, like, reading it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. That was nice that you told them.
I was really torn up over it because part of me was like, I don't care, we're friends, that's in the past, whatever. And I was like, this is kind of shady of me if I don't tell them. So yeah.
So she's not an evil redhead?
No.
Okay, nice. And I have these came from Stephanie, actually. Stephanie is a librarian. She interviewed you virtually. And these are like her zines. And I wanted to pass them. She told me I could pass them around. But be very nice with them, because they're not mine, they're hers. But you can take a look at them. The one is Checked Out, which is like the first of your zines, and then the second of Blabbermouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass those around.
Yeah, Blabbermouth. So I did come up through zine culture like in the 90s a lot. And so I was making zines, and I like that you can, the kind of outsider status of zines and how cheap they are to make. And so Blabbermouth was a zine I made that was the first issue drew from... Back in my day, we used to write notes on paper and like fold them up and pass them to each other in middle school. And I had this whole box of them. So I did a zine based on those. And then I did another Blabbermouth that was just like me just like purging all of my secrets. I only printed 150 of those. And if you have it, could you throw it out?
Oh no.
Yeah. And
which one was that one?
That was also called Blabbermouth.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's out. But and then I was doing Checked Out. In 2018, I was just like pitching all kinds of short form nonfiction comics to various outlets. Like I went with a group of cartoonists to protest the Republican National Convention in 2016, and I did a bunch of comics about that. And so I was just pitching a lot. And then one thing I pitched was this idea about kind of like a workplace drama behind the scenes at the library. So I pitched to Edith Zimmerman, who was running Spiral Bound, which was a comics magazine online.
Yeah.
And so we did maybe like 8 installments of Checked Out online. And each of those installments, the title was a match to an existing book. Like there's this book called Love, Loss, and What I Wore, and that was the name of one of the installments. I found a book in the stacks called The Mystery and Lore of Apparitions, which I thought was a really cool title, so that became the name. And then a lot of the comics that were on Spiral Bound didn't make it into the finished book, but the book is Checked Out is in 3 parts, and each part is named after an existing book.
Oh.
Yeah, like part 1 is named after Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence, which is kind of like one of these classics.
Yeah.
The second part is called La Bâtarde, which is named after this obsessive memoir by this French lesbian called Violette Leduc.
Okay.
And the third part is called Goodbye to All That, which is a famous World War I memoir by Robert Graves. So the idea was like as a little nod to like any other book fetishists who might be reading it.
Yeah.
And it's also like the way you might cover a song. I thought I would like cover the titles of books.
No, that's fun. Yeah, that's fun. I'm not well read enough to have noticed. Sorry.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have told you that, because there's no reason. I mean, and I always like, I need to make sure I've read these 3 books. So I actually hadn't read The Age of Innocence. It's actually not that bad.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Check
I'd
it
seen
out.
the movie though with like Michelle Pfeiffer, I think. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I'll have to go back and I'll check and I'll see if I'm interested in reading any of those books.
I would definitely recommend La Bâtarde.
Yeah?
It's the second in a set of 2 memoirs by Violette Ledoux, and the second one's called Mad in Pursuit. She's living in France in the 50s or no, I don't remember what year it is, but she's obsessed with Simone de Beauvoir and Jean Genet, and she's kind of stalking them, and it's really fascinating
that's
stuff.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. So the titles of each part, they relate to what's happening in those parts, or you just chose them based on vibes? Or
no, they actually do relate to what's happening in the parts as well.
Okay.
But they were also chosen on vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like the content of the books, the
like
parts
the
are named
first part,
after.
The Age of Innocence, the character is like first getting her job at a library. She's starting to learn about this pigeon and that she wants to write a book. La Bâtarde features this like confession from the character's mother that kind of relates to the words La Bâtarde, and then Goodbye to All That is like the end of the book.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's fun. I need to go back and reread it now that I know that, and I'll read those books and I'll have a whole different perspective.
Yeah, those are my little Easter eggs for
That's
like
fun.
librarians.
Yeah.
And book nerds.
Yeah. So since this book is about a library worker, I'm sure you've encountered like far more real life library workers since its release than like maybe any other cartoonist that has put out a book. Personally, I love to see like the little tiny library crimes that like Louise gets away with. She like waives fines. She hoards the books that she wants to read.
Yeah.
And I also like, then we talked about this a little bit, that like it focuses on someone that works in a library but is not a librarian.
Yes.
Which that's important. Were there like specific parts of Checked Out that like librarians or like people that work in libraries have approached you that like they mentioned to you, or they highlighted as like a part that they liked, or that they, really saw something there, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, one librarian was very scandalized about the part where the character waives her own fines, which like I do every day. I mean, I once had a book out for 4 years. 4 years. Yeah, I'm a very
That's long.
It's really naughty thing to do, but I kept checking to see like if there were any holds on it, and there weren't. So. But yeah, that's not great librarianship. So the librarians were some of them were very upset that the character was waiving her own fines. There's also a sequence where Louise is shelving books because she starts as a library page, which is where I started in library work, and she finds little trinkets in books. And I mean, that sequence could have gone on forever and ever and ever, because I had so many things that I had found in library books, but we ended up just cutting it to 2 pages. But I think that's something that the library workers like too. There's something really magical about, finding like a napkin with somebody's phone number on it, or like somebody's plane ticket, but it's like from 1989.
Yeah.
I think ephemera is very much of interest to me, so I definitely wanted to include that, and that is sort of a way of preserving it, like to keep it in the book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's so fun. I've found like Valentines that like people wrote to each other in books, which makes me a little sad when that's gone. But it's cute.
One time I found this old Polaroid where they were still like exactly square from like the 70s, I think. I found this old Polaroid of this couple, and they were like on vacation, and they were sitting at the bar, And then a few years later, I found a different picture of that same couple, like on a different night in another book. So I felt pretty magical about that.
That is magical.
Yeah, so I kept both of those.
They got to stop leaving their pictures in books, though.
I do
That's
feel
a
sad,
bummer.
yeah, especially when you get like a photo booth picture or
Yeah.
like or you can tell like it's like maybe somebody's mother wrote a note. It's
Yeah.
like in sort of like cursive. Like yeah, sometimes I feel sad finding those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also fun to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat. So, pivoting a little bit more into, the actual book itself, the content of the book. I've seen you describe your art style as messy. The book itself is like messy in a lot of ways, like Louise's personal life, her approach to her graphic novel. Like she'll just like randomly get an idea in the middle of conversation and run out and just be like, I gotta do this now.
Yeah.
It's like life itself in many ways. It's like, non-linear in parts. Louise like recalls her childhood, and then it'll go back to, talking about that, and then go back to the present. It reads very much like how you go about a day generally thinking about things. How did you ensure each element worked together without being like too busy or confusing?
It was really hard. I mean, I think I have ADD. Like, I don't know. I mean, I definitely have some things, but I haven't particularly been diagnosed with that. But it was really hard because I had like all these ideas cropping up at the same time. There are maybe like 5 threads that weave in and out of the book. So a lot of my help came from friends who would come over and help me kind of unpack what I was actually saying, because I wasn't sure a lot of the time, but I felt like it was really important to tighten it and make sure that by the time it was finished, there was a beginning, middle, and end, and that it. So one of my friends really helped me by telling me that no matter, like, first we're going to identify 5 themes in the book and we're going to write them down. So it's like pigeons, World War I, library life, queerness, and New York City. Mm-hmm. And so then it was like, no matter how many tangents you go on, or like if you start to ramble, like just make sure that that part of it is still serving one of those 5 themes. So that was helpful to kind of identify the themes. And then it was also helpful for me to have someone else come in and be able to identify the themes, because a lot of times I was worried I was just in my own like cloud, not being clear. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess the drawings are gestural. I did them fast, but at the same time I drew a number of pages like over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So, in the end, it did come together, but it was dicey. I mean, I was worried that it was going to seem contrived in a lot of places, but I think it worked out.
Yeah, no, I think it did too.
I mean, that's really nice to hear. Yeah,
yeah, no, yeah. It's great. If anybody hasn't read it yet, they should, because it's wonderful, and it comes across. It makes sense. Like,
thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good. You have my seal of approval. You can move on with your life.
Yeah. Well, and also, thank you. Well, and also there's, like the book is, for a second I was like, oh, maybe I should be like tightening the colors, and like maybe I shouldn't be using like every color in my watercolor set, but I just couldn't really control myself. So it is just, I think I have like a 36 palette set, so it's like all those colors, but then there are flashbacks that happen in the book, and since there are elements that deal with like having been to war, and since shell shock was coined for soldiers returning from World War I, which we now know as PTSD, mm-hmm. and one of the symptoms of PTSD is flashbacks. It was nice to kind of make those connections that I hadn't made in the first place as I was doing the book, that there are flashbacks in the book. I did them in monochrome so you could tell them apart from the other parts of the book, but it did make me feel good to know that thematically it worked as well as contextually.
Yeah. No, it did. So like you said, there are many stories out there where it's, a queer young white woman in the city. And there are many city stories to begin with. How would you say Checked Out differs from other city stories?
I mean, maybe it doesn't, I don't feel like I would be here without my queer community and my community of like other cartoonists. So in a lot of ways, I have no problem sort of like emulating or being a part of this chunk of stories that are of this genre. I guess maybe I've heard that the pigeon thing is kind of weird, especially because, and even so, I was working on the book that Louise is working on in this book, and I
was gonna ask too if the pigeon book was like your pigeon book to begin with. Okay,
it was, and I this book took me 5 years, and for the 10 years prior to that, I was working on this book about this pigeon, and I went to the battlefields of France, and I was like reading all kinds of war materials, like journals and all kinds of things, and I thought it was really interesting stuff, but some of my friends were like, "What are you doing?" And so I don't know. I guess I think one thing that a lot of cartoonists have in common is like tunnel vision and zeroing in on certain things and becoming sort of obsessive about them. So for me, it was this pigeon. So I think that's probably a unique element to the book. Otherwise, I think it does fall in line with a bunch of queer memoirs that came before me, and like that's cool.
No, that is cool. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is good. And I do think the pigeon part is unique. It's fun.
Yeah, and the particular library that's in the book is not a public library. It's a private membership library. These are things that really exist. In the US, I think there's 16 of them. It basically means you have to pay to play. So anybody can join the library, but there's a subscription fee. And then this particular library in the book is on the Upper East Side. So it serves a clientele that is elders or the 1%, and so there's a lot of quirks to the library in this book that I have noticed that a lot of librarians I've met are not used to this kind of library, or people will ask me like, why on earth would I pay for a library membership? So I think that's unique to it as well.
Yeah, well, people come in and ask here. They ask like, how much is it to get a library card? And I'm like, free, and they're shocked. Which it's not everywhere. That's interesting.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, nothing is free anymore except for like pens and umbrellas. You know, like
Truly, there's always pens and umbrellas out there, and tote bags.
Yeah, I'll never buy an umbrella. Like, there's always one somewhere.
You can find one. Yeah. Great. So I was going to ask if you had any advice for like cartoonists like Louise, like yourself, that are struggling to finish a book that maybe is not that it's not working, but like, what kind of pushed you to instead pivot to something else? Was it like, you mentioned your friends saying, what is this? Like, was there like something like, and some people don't listen to that. Some people will just go on and keep doing that. What was it that kind of got you to pivot and make Checked Out?
Like desperation, I would say. It was like, it does feel good to finish something, and like I think there are so many things that we do leave unfinished. Like, I think maybe it can be rewarding to actually close your project, like whether you are done with it or not. Like, I think there's something really powerful to walking away from something that's not serving you anymore. Like the pigeon story, I just kept reading the same thing over and over again about this pigeon. And then a lot of people in the battalion that this pigeon saved were from New York City. And I was thinking to myself, I haven't researched any of those people at all, And so part of me was feeling like maybe I was doing some kind of injustice or being this like faux historian. So I guess it is a good thing to think about sort of the larger purpose of your project. If you do want your project just to serve you, that's totally fine. But if there are elements of it that touch other people, I mean, you do kind of have a responsibility to either stop what you're doing if you're stuck, or to do it right and pivot. I mean, one thing I would say to any cartoonist who's struggling to finish their book is like, you don't have to listen to anyone, because everyone is going to give you a piece of advice. And especially in underground comics, there are all these little pockets of like different, like cliques basically within underground comics. And just because you're an indie cartoonist, like, you don't have to listen to the way other people do things. So I think if you are constantly asking yourself, am I doing this right? Which is something that I was doing. And I'm still asking myself, did I do this right? It's like, maybe just throw that question out.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. Yeah. Do you think you'll ever go back to the pigeons? Or
no way.
No, never.
No, but It's funny because I have like this big Tupperware. I have like 2 or 3 Tupperwares of like all my drawings and my papers and stuff from the pigeon book. And I don't know what to do with it. Like, some people are like, throw it out. You did it. It's over. But I feel really attached to it. So, I mean, maybe that's part of the working in a library. You kind of do see value in like your trash, But yeah, I'm still grappling with that. Like, I don't even some of these pages. Yeah, I drew them like 5 or 6 times. Like, I don't need to save all 5 versions of it, but I have saved them.
'Cause you're like, maybe I'll need it someday.
Yeah.
You could put them in a zine.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm actually happy. Like, I don't think I want to do another like autobiographical piece for a while. I think I'm maxed out and I've heard enough from myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heard enough from yourself about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one last question before we ask if anybody else has any questions. Is there anything you're reading right now or anything you'd recommend to readers who enjoyed Checked Out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like for anyone who's read Checked Out. I mean, things that I'm working or that I'm reading right now. So I do copy editing as one of my side gigs. Like, when I have like 5 side gigs, cat sitting, copy editing, it goes on. But I'm doing copy editing, and I just copy edited this book called Hell in a Handbag. It's by this performer who goes by the name Dynasty Handbag. And she's in San Francisco, and she's like a performance artist, a writer, a singer, and she's been doing stuff since the early 2000s. She just wrote her memoir, and it is so good. So it's called Hell in a Handbag. Her real name is Jibbs Cameron, Jibz Cameron. So I would definitely recommend that. Mm-hmm. I have a friend, Julian Delgado Lopera, who is like from Colombia, a trans writer and artist and performer, and they're doing a lot of scholarship around like trans Latinx elders, and so they have a lot of really interesting work out. Like, they did an oral history, and they did a book for the feminist press called Fibre Tropical, and their book is coming out next year. Their next book, it's called Pretend You're Dead and I'll Carry You, and I think that's really something to watch out for as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. This was really fun. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask Katie? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I feel like a lot of artists have the plight of like, they want to make they have like a new idea for a thing to make like every day, every hour, or like, how do you pick all the things that you've like put out into the world? How did you like be like, okay, this is the one I'm going to spend the time doing?
I mean, you just have to pick one, like you have to pick one. It's like, so in March 2020, we all got sent home from the library because of the pandemic. I had like a bunch of different book proposals that I hadn't finished, and I was just kind of noodling around with them, like, again, with like the sort of ADD brain. And yeah, we were all home in our apartments. It was really freaky and awful, and I was like, we could all be dead soon. So I just picked one. So like, I don't know, maybe find a motivator like fear of death. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Or like sometimes revenge can be a great motivator. Like maybe somebody which is such a nasty thing to say, but I'm really motivated by revenge. Like sometimes somebody I know will come out with a really awesome book and I'm like, damn it. Like I wish that I have finished mine. So I think if you can find something to fuel yourself, like it doesn't have to be like moral, I think just you have to pick something, and then maybe I would say call in people around you to keep you accountable. Like if you can write in a group or have people check in on you, that's really helpful so that you're not feeling like you're just spinning by yourself.
I know we're past the pigeon. We're very far past the pigeon, but I am curious, how did he save the 200 people? Or how did the pigeon save the 200 people?
Nice. What's funny is when I was researching the pigeon, there was all of this debate as to whether the pigeon was like a boy or a girl. And I was like, oh my God, so the pigeon, okay, so in World War I employed a lot of animals, pigeons, horses, dogs. So early on in the war, the communication systems that were in place were kind of like blown out. And so they actually had to use pigeons to send messages. And you can train pigeons to return to any location from anywhere. So basically there was a capsule that would go on the pigeon's leg, and the different like troops would communicate to each other via pigeon. They were also hard to shoot at. I mean, that's so sad, but like it was like, so they were hard targets. So basically the Lost Battalion it started out as like 500 or 600 men. By the time they were rescued, there were only 200 of them left. They got trapped basically on all sides behind enemy lines, and then they took cover down a ravine, and then they were like really trapped. So they had to communicate to battalion headquarters where they were, because they were also being attacked by like their own forces too, and so the pigeon had their coordinates on its leg and was able to alert the rest of the soldiers as to where they were. Yeah. But it was like a super tragic story. And it's actually, that's the official version. But if you read the book like that, maybe that's not what happened. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now you have to read it to find out.
What qualities, it's interesting, graphic novels. What qualities of a story are you able to explore in a graphic novel that a regular novel format like wouldn't provide you? I mean, other than just like really great, visual work, but.
Well, there's a play between words and pictures that I think really affects the pacing and the mood of a book. Like I started as I was doing the book, because I had never done anything longer than 16 pages before I did this book. And I started realizing as I was doing it, like I can actually slow the narrative down. So obviously you can do that just in prose, but I think that there's, you can just do one page that's just like a splash page of one picture. You can do a silent page with no words on it. You can do a page full of words. And I think that there is sort of a sensory impact on the reader that's unique to comics. I also think there's something about the spaces between panels that can help you manipulate time in a really unique way. But a lot of times it's, you always hear this lesson like, oh, show, don't tell. And like, that's especially true in comics. Like I would frequently be writing something and then my editor would be like, this is drawn, you don't need to write it. And so it is kind of like poetry in a sense that less is more in terms of writing. So I think, yeah, I think it gives some unique opportunities. Also, if you aren't someone who can sit and pay attention and read a book that's all in writing, like I think comics are such a great relief. You know, I know a lot of people learn to read from comics. And so there's a lot to be said for like, you know, neurodivergent thinking and the way that comics can cater to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my question kind of piggybacks off this a little bit, and you touched on this earlier, but I'm interested in basically if it gets any easier to parse your writing. I think like this format, like you've been saying, lends itself to that, and what you were saying to that question about the use of visual images. But I'm curious, like, has that gotten easier, or has it translated into your other work, or if you're doing writing that doesn't involve, you know, graphic novels or isn't for zines? Because I feel like we all hear how important it is to be cutting all the time.
Yeah. I mean, no, it hasn't gotten easier.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, no, it's like every single page hurt, you know, and but I wanted to be a writer before I was doing cartoons. And so the writing is very important to me. And you know, I think sometimes I don't want to say any like generalizations or like knock comics, but sometimes I think the writing is more of an afterthought in comics. And so I think that there is something to be said for like following certain conventions that you might learn in creative writing schools that maybe don't occur to someone who's only ever done comics. So you do have to kind of like bend your brain to do it. And yeah, it's like, it's pure pain.
So bad news, it never gets easier
well,
to edit
it's
yourself.
like, it's cool when you actually see what you've done and it makes you feel good. So it is worth it. But I don't know. I think it's pretty gruesome.
All right, thank you. Did anybody else have any questions? No? You have a question? Yeah.
Thank you very much for great presentation.
Thank you.
A lovely night. My question is, you mentioned 50 books a year. It's pretty lot. It's almost one book a week. I just wonder, you have specific genre, specific author, or it's different genre, different authors? And do you have some books that you reread again and again, once in a while? Thank you.
No, I don't read in specific genres. I'll read about like a sock for 600 pages if I like the writing. You know, it's like I like memoirs. I like contemporary fiction, biography. I had a little true crime moment. I never really got into fantasy, but I'm starting to dip into fantasy. So, no, I mean, I kind of read all over the place. Yeah.
That's a good question. I should have asked that question. That's a good question. All right. So thank you, Katie.
Thanks,
this
everybody.
Was really fun. Yeah, and you can borrow Checked Out. You can also buy Checked Out if you'd like tonight. But thank you guys so much for coming. And if you don't have a library card, you can get a library card downstairs.
It's free.
It's free, like we mentioned, and you should. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.